Um, Default tone, cool. Okay, but the headphone speaker, yeah, cool. All right, so Dan, this is intro for Charles Myssy episode. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Everyday Legends podcast. I'm your host, Mike Campbell, and today I'm excited to bring you someone who really enjoy. I'll start that again. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Everyday Legends podcast. I'm your host, Mike Campbell, and today I'm stoked to bring you another guest conversation. And this one I was really looking forward to. Had a great conversation. Someone who I've followed online for a little while. I love his content. There's a lot of depth in there. There's a lot of loving truth and sometimes that brutal kind of whew. And then there's so much beauty and humor. I love some of the videos that he makes. They're hilarious. And this is Mr. Charles Myssy. Charles is, I love the tagline that he uses. He says, healing that's not too clinical and not too spiritual. And he's someone who brings a lot of inner child work, a lot of shadow work, a lot of dealing with your shit that sits beneath the surface that might manifest in a bunch of shit that isn't really working. We talk about that. His own journey from being an angry teen, sullen, alone in his room, a lot of anger, to getting out of his room and out of his head and out of his body a little bit, out of his body into his body a little bit more. And then some experiences where he had some challenging shit occur and happen and come up, and then go through, and then all these wonderful experiences that he had when he actually went out into the world traveling and so on, but that led him into confrontation with himself, really, and that kind of inner child or his own wounds and the shit that wasn't working for him and kind of where that's got him now. We do some really beautiful, Charles shares some really practical pieces on how to explore that stuff for yourself as you go through. You'll hear this. We talks about the leaves, the branches, the trunk, and the roots of the tree. That is yourself. Really beautiful teaching lesson in there as well. And we explore some things for men around protecting and being the protector, but also the expansion of the shift from kind of boyhood and boy psychology and development into a man. I love this conversation. There's so much more here that we could talk about. I think this has already got a part two set up, but we kind of speak to that a little bit at the end. A wonderful conversation. Dive in, listen, take from it. Go and follow Charles. Check out some of his content. And as always, pass this on to someone that you know will benefit from it, that you think that might enjoy it as well. As always, I don't do ads. I don't take any income for this podcast. And so how we can spread this is by you passing this on to someone. So that's my ask of you. And of course, leave reviews, tap download, subscribe, all those things help us get this in front of more eyes and more ears and more men who could step into getting more from life, love, in the everyday, actually dealing with this shit so we stop causing shit for ourselves and others, because that's really what I'm here to do. All right. I trust you'll enjoy this one. Into the show. Charles, welcome to the Everyday Legends podcast. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, all right. Wow, I have chosen and been selected as a representative of yet another everyday legend. This is an absolute honor. Wow.
Oh, it is, and you shall see. Although maybe we'll just reflect on that at the end. Now, look, it's so cool to have you here. We're talking off air. I followed your content, and I do very much enjoy the stuff that you put out. For those listeners, if you haven't checked out Charles, make sure you do. But this conversation will give you a bit more of an insight. But I love the breadth that you bring to your content. Some really profound, some really hard-hitting, challenging stuff, and some really light and funny stuff. I love the nuance and the breadth in there. And yeah, maybe some of the people watching or listening to this know you, have come across you. But also there'll be plenty, I imagine, that don't. So here's the introduction. And so I want to kind of get to know you a little more. And the question that I'm going to ask is one that I like to ask here, and you can go, man, anywhere you want with this. And I'm interested to see where you take it. And that is this. Who is Charles Myssy?
All righty. Who am I? Well, I am a 32-year-old shadow work practitioner that lives in Bondi Beach, Sydney, Australia. And a bit more about me. I have been working in the coaching space for over 10 years. And my passion for helping people and supporting people all catapulted as a result of a series of very negative, challenging experiences that at that time I didn't really know how to deal with it, and as a result decided to muster up a bit of courage and face some of those inner demons. And as a result of that, I attained some pretty cool growth and transformation within myself across all different aspects of my life. And I really enjoyed that process, and I thought it was really cool and quite beautiful, kind of like a gardener going into a garden and planting flowers and attending to them and nurturing them and manipulating the environment around them in order to facilitate some growth and evolution within the plant. I quite liked going through that journey myself, and I felt called to then start supporting people on their journey and going through the different layers that I've already taken myself on, that to guide and support them through that. So that's what I do now full time, and I love it. I've created a few different communities, an online community called Triber. It's an online shadow work program where we facilitate different healing modalities to support people to understand their psyche a whole lot more and integrate any parts of themselves that have been abandoned or orphaned since a young age. A lot of the work that I do really heavily focuses on inner child work. So those early formative years that we're in and how they shape and mold us in how we are today, and how that's mostly operating subconsciously, getting people to break out of some of the prisons that they construct themselves in without them necessarily realizing that. I love supporting people in achieving those breakthroughs, those huge aha light bulb moments. They're just very meaningful, and it brings me a lot of joy watching people going through that. And I believe that everyone has the capacity to reach those points no matter where you're at. And I've also co-created another community, which is more in person. It's a conscious, ecstatic tribal dance party that we do in Bondi Beach every week. That was just really, it just came out of nothing. Like, I just go down to the beach, play my drum, and then a couple other musicians there. And then over the weeks and months, it's just grown into this beautiful community. And now we're getting like hundreds of people come down to the beach. Also facilitate retreats. We have a retreat coming up soon, the Triber retreat on the 21st of August to the 23rd. Just a mix of like different healing modalities, things that I've really done on my journey that have like been really integral for me in bettering my understanding of myself. Things from sound healing to shadow work, parts work, to martial arts, to ice baths, breath work, even just to drums and DJ and just having a party, having some fun. So this is the space that I'm in right now, and I absolutely love it. And that's the little bit about me and what I do.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. I think plenty to dig into. Okay, so I want to kind of zoom back to the start of that. You said, there was, I'm just going to paraphrase, some shit that you were going through experience that certainly wasn't working or sending you in the path that you wanted to go, and it kind of catapulted you into basically doing some work. And then like all of this work, and as you said, some beautiful change, and then like, holy shit, this is powerful. Fuck, man, I could be doing some of this stuff. Can you take us into that? Like, was this some, in my experience, for a lot of guys, there's a version of rock bottom. And it's not necessarily, like waking up under a bridge covered in our own piss and shit and vomit, but something happens where, holy shit, there's a wake up moment. But sometimes it's not that. It's not a big thing. It's like a series of things, and then finally, there's the camel, the final straw that breaks the camel's back, and so on. What did that look like for you? Was that something that you've been experienced, or was it like, holy shit, wow, a slap to the face? And then, how did you actually go about stepping towards that? Because I know the inertia of starting can be very large.
Yeah, so I think there was a few things. Some of them were like kind of like a quite pivotal moment that sparked a lot of change quite quickly and rapidly. Some of them were more progressive and just kind of gradually occurred over time. But I'd say one of the big things that just got me off on the right track from what I was doing before. So I just to give you a bit of an understanding of the state that I used to be in, I was very isolated. I know I kind of come across as a very outgoing, extroverted person, and I am. But at the state that I was in back then, I was very isolated.
Mm-hmm.
I would spend like, I think at one point I was like spending 14 to 16 hours a day in my room playing video games. Just wake
Right.
up, straight on the computer, playing games, just literally turning into a zombie,
Mm-hmm.
eating shit, like just bowls of Cocoa Pops just to keep me going, of the addiction of being completely disassociated from reality by transporting myself into this fantasy world. So that's what I used to do a lot in my teenage years, quite early teenage years. And then also following from that, very, very angry. I used to hold on to a
Mm-hmm.
lot of anger, and it would eventually manifest and spill out and be projected out onto people or walls and doors or people's faces. And so
Yeah.
that I really struggled with anger. And in fact, my nickname at high school was Aggro, one of
Yeah.
my
Right.
nicknames. So very, very aggressive. I didn't know
Yeah.
how to process and deal with my anger at that time. Went to anger management. And actually, that was at school. That was actually something that helped me quite well because it was after I got into like a bit of a scuffle with someone at school. And it was the first time someone like asked me like what's going on, and the
Mm.
teacher that I had at that time, I remember he was quite spiritual. He actually guided me through my very first meditation that we did. He was quite religious as well, as a religious man. And in the meditation, he had like Jesus there. And I just remember it was a very beautiful experience and I felt really at peace. So I felt quite safe with this man. He was like the year coordinator, something like that. He was
Right.
also a school counselor.
Was it because it also sounds like hey, because I've been there, dude, a period where there's the potential for a lot of resistance to anything like that. And basically what you're saying sounds like that could have been. So how was the actual process of allowing yourself to step into that?
Well, I think there definitely was a lot of resistance because on the surface, the way I would express myself was like victim, like a huge victim
Mm.
mentality. Um, a lot of anger being projected out towards my dad, who wasn't around. Yeah, he
Mm-hmm.
left at that time when we were about 8, and when I was 8, and he was in and out of my life. So that created a lot of anger and sense of
Mm.
unworthiness that I wasn't good enough as a son. Otherwise he would be here, right? So
And
this is
those were quite conscious thoughts for you?
yeah, this is all conscious thoughts, and I was
Yeah.
quite verbal with these thoughts as well.
Right.
Um, to my friends and stuff, but I wasn't getting out of that mindset. I was
Yeah.
in it. I
This
was
is
very
it.
this
I'm
is
locked
I
in
was
this.
very attached to
Yeah.
uh that this is my life, and you're good at sports and you're good at school because you got a good family, and we're stressed out at home, we're living in housing commission, we got no money, and my dad's not here, you got a dad, that's why you're doing better than me. So it was all very much a
Mm.
victim mentality that I wore for quite some time, few years. But basically, as it would manifest and come out to the surface, and at school got into that scuffle, I
Mm.
had to go to anger management.
Right.
The
Yeah.
part
Yeah.
of like the disciplinary
Yeah. Too bad.
process. But what was cool was the anger management process. It wasn't like I didn't feel like I was being punished
Right.
for what I did. It felt like I was actually being heard and
Mm.
inquired into. And, my hard exterior was eventually being, penetrated, and then let the walls drop down until, there was really a scared, sad, sobbing, crying, teenage boy
Mm.
who, eventually started sharing what was the actual root of, his anger. And I
Mm.
remember like what I said in that session. And this is my first experience of any kind of therapy or anything like that. And I definitely think it's something that created a good relationship with it, like just talking. And it's no
Mm-hmm.
doubt allowed me to place a higher value and emphasis on the type of work that I do with people, because I'm like, yeah, it actually works, it helps. Yeah, And I remember, like, as I was, getting deeper and deeper, and he must have done some kind of self-development or something, and he knows what kind of questions to ask to prod and get to the root. All these emotions started coming out. I just remember I was crying so much, and I remember it's like the words saying that, like, it feels like my dad doesn't want me as a son, because I think at that time he got like remarried, and the other lady had a couple other kids, and he was spending a lot of time with them, taking them on holidays and stuff. And we were living in fucking housing commission, could barely have enough money to pay for like just a decent amount of food in the week, and looking for coins and just shit like that. And I just remember saying that, and then all these emotions just started out. And I think that was really healthy for me at that time, just digesting some of the loss that I felt like I had. So that was a really cool moment. And then shortly after that, I'd say probably about a couple of years after that, me and a friend of mine, we got jumped. So jumped meaning like a larger group of men attacked me and him. And it was over something. My friend had some dramas with this guy. It was all like just teenage guy shit. It was very pointless, primitive, psychological, like, you spoke to my girlfriend, like stuff like that. So we got jumped after school one day, and they were bigger than us and older. They must have been like 4 years older than us, and I was probably like 15, 16 at the time, so scrawny little kid. And we got bashed, like knocked out cold. First time I've ever gotten knocked out, like blacked out on the ground, concussed, and kicked. We were getting kicked as we were on the ground. It was quite a, it wasn't a very pleasant experience going through that, feeling that helpless and that weak, defenseless. But what I got out of that experience was, I had the courage to go and like support my friend in the face of complete adversity and, odds that were against us. So I was quite proud of myself for that. I had the courage to do that. And the next thing was, I'm a weak piece of shit, and I am the man of the house with 3 sisters and my mum. And I know we've been robbed before. Our home has been robbed. Our car's been robbed before. I've got memories of this. I know that as a kid, I've actually walked with my mum and sisters in public. And because my mum and sisters, they're very attractive women, very beautiful women. My mum's a hairdresser. My sisters, like, they're quite attractive. They would receive attention from men. And sometimes those men would be very, just vulgar and disgusting in the way that they would approach that. And as a young little kid, I used to just kind of get angry about that. And as a teenager, I'm there, like, really starting to find who I am as a man. And then here I am getting bashed on the street. I'm like, fuck, what am I going to do if we get robbed again? What am I going to do this? What am I going to do that? I'm like, fuck, I got to learn how to fucking fight. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, I need to get bigger. I need to get stronger. And that's actually what got me off all the video games.
Right.
And got me into self-development. I decided to go sign up at the local boxing gym. It stunk like shit in there. It was very sweaty, and the gloves were just like rotting from the inside. The gym didn't, it closed down. It was really old, just like police citizens youth club, like one of those gyms. And I just remember walking in there, and I started training every single day for like 2 hours. I would go there, hit the speed ball, hit the heavy bag, do weights at the end. My technique was horrible, and I had barely any idea what I was doing, but it was besides the point. The point with that was, I committed myself to something. I started like the hero's journey. Like, I began the journey of like shedding these layers of myself and these prison that I was in. Like, I'm a worthless piece of shit, and I am just going to play video games as a way to escape my reality. And I'm actually changing something about myself and bettering myself.
The dialogue internally started to change?
Dialogue internally, it was like, it started off as like being in the gym, smashing, like it was like a somatic healing experience.
Yeah.
Like I was like releasing this energy that was pent up, all this anger that I had towards all these, these men on the streets that were like in these gangs, or society, or it was really all just like based on my relationship with my father. That's where it all, like, a lot of that anger came from.
Was there still the awareness? Because you've obviously had this quite significant experience sometime earlier. So was there awareness around the anger and how you were kind of accessing it? Or was it just like, this is fucking here and I'm letting that energy out?
That's right. This is me intellectualizing and explaining the story of it. Yeah. Now, from back then, I was just fucking going to the gym and just putting my fucking, my 2-pack music on and going like, I need to be the biggest, strongest, fastest guy. I need to protect. And inevitably what it did
There's such beauty in that energy too, right? Like I love the awareness, of course. I can intellectualize it now. And was it for those reasons then? Well, no, because I was still basically a kid, but still there's so much beauty and love in that, as well. When you look at like me, boundaries being crossed, my loved ones, boundaries being crossed, like I need to be able to do something about that.
That's it. And I was just present with that. I wasn't there going, oh, but that's kind of toxic, thinking about it in that way. I was just expressing myself in that moment. That's the stage that I was in. I was just essentially being present with my anger, with my aggression, and learning how to channel with it. I was connecting to my masculine energy, learning how to be like competitive and have goals and targets and like all that stuff.
Was that quite new?
That was all new. I didn't play sports much when I was young. Again, it was all because my dad wasn't there to pick a ball with me, and I wasn't academically sound at school. I had no drive, and there was a few subjects that I kind of liked, like ancient history, art, drama, things like that. But anything else, I wasn't competitive at all with anything like that. So it felt like it was the beginning of me integrating these more masculine components of myself that have been lost because the connection with my father wasn't there to help me integrate that. So yeah, bro. So I started training, and it inevitably got me off the video games. It got me off the streets as well, because there was a bit of like a hierarchical thing in the street, like, who are you with? Who's your group? What's the latest clothing and Nike TNs that you're wearing or whatever? Have you smoked your first ciggy yet? Like, it's just that kind of culture. And it was very tribalistic then. There were many groups around that would be in rivalry with each other. And you just find yourself caught up in it inevitably, So it got me out of that environment and got me in a space to just become a better person, and it set me off on the right track. And that eventually led into everything else. And one more thing I'd say, it was a relationship breakup. Funny that it's generally those things as well.
Similar time or later on?
Much later on. This was like I was about 21.
Yeah, cool.
And just makes completely sense. In love, like had just very I had no idea how to communicate, and resentment would build. I would freeze up and not when something didn't sit very well with me. It would all come out eventually in the form of this big swearing, arguing, and after that, rightfully so, she dumped me, and it was the best thing ever, because I had all these wounds from my past reopen.
Yep.
That was all based on the dynamic in that relationship. And my go-to way at that time of dealing with it was like, I just got to get my mind off all these thoughts. I remember my mind was just like, I was like, I couldn't stop thinking. I couldn't sleep properly for like a year. It was so intense because I was trying to like train myself out of it, work myself out of it. And it was good because it got me training hard and working harder, but it wasn't dealing. Exactly. It wasn't dealing with it. I was just like, I need to get my mind off it. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go traveling. And I decided to actually start traveling the world and booking myself trips to like South America, Africa, Pakistan, all these different countries. And it's through that I actually started to like challenge a shitload of limiting beliefs that I had about myself, about society, about the world, about family, you know, spending time with these tribes and these villages and seeing how the whole family's connected and they're all in nature and everyone's so chill and they got nothing. And I'm here going, what the fuck? Everything I've been taught is a lie. You know, it's just like hanging out on the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan, the world's most dangerous roads. People are dying. A car fell off the side of a mountain. Life goes on. You know, I'm scared to go on this dangerous road. I'm like, hey, man, it rained last night. I don't know if we should go. Should we maybe wait another day for the water to clear up so we don't slip on a banana and then fall down the mountain as well? And the guide is there smoking a ciggy going, bro, it doesn't matter. When you die, you die. You know, nothing matters when you die. And I'm there going, bro, these people are on another frequency. Like they don't even get it. So it was a lot of
I haven't landed where you are yet, man.
Exactly. Yeah, I felt like I was just a little boy. I'm thinking like a little scared boy. Like what? And it was through that I really just started to just like, you know, hiking and in the mountains and seeing like wild animals coming face to face with like, I got stalked by a leopard once. I went in this jungle in southern Nepal on the border of India, and there was tiger footprints everywhere. There's just like a lot of experiences where I'm like, okay, this is actually what it feels like to be stressed. This is when the fight, flight response, freeze response, you know, fawn response, whatever, all these responses, this is me being actually present with it. And this feels a lot different than the self-inflicted psychological stress that I used to impose on myself. Like this is like present-based stress, and it feels real, and it feels like my body's doing what it should be doing. This over here is psychologically constructing narratives and my body, you know, triggering these responses out of these perceived threats that subjectively are valid, but objectively aren't serving me. That's different. What is that? Like, what do I need to keep doing that? I don't need to do that anymore. And that just really opened me up and allowed me to start really stepping into, let's say, all these self-work, psychological work, spiritual stuff that I'm in now.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you. And so much in there. This is, you know, just my own curiosity, was the intention of like heading off on those trips like, let's just go and experience some different shit, or was it more a bit of the cliche perhaps, like if I need to go and figure my own shit out and kind of, you know, quote unquote find myself? You know, was there an intentionality to that side of it, or do you kind of like, for lack of a better term, find a lot of this along the way?
I think there's so many different perspectives of it, from depending on what part of me you ask. Okay, there would have been the part of me who was struggling to deal with, you know, in those first couple of trips I did, deal with the loss and the grief of the relationship. I'd definitely say he wanted to escape his own mind. You know, that's
so a different form, as you said. You've been training, you've been working out, you've been doing this stuff. You know, here's a different way.
Correct.
Of doing that. Yeah.
There was a part of me who actually understood the value of it, like completely changing your environment, putting yourself somewhere out of your comfort zone.
It's not some of the quintessential kind of, I'm going to go travel to Europe or the US. Like, you've gone to some pretty interesting places.
Exactly. Going to places where you're like a no one. Like in the gym that I worked in when I was a personal trainer in the area that I lived in, you know, I had some sense of like a status, you know, whereas I'm going to these random places, walking around in a favela in Brazil or a slum, and no one gives a fuck about you. You know, there's someone there on the road without legs who's blind, praying like this in a busy, crowded slum, going like this, you know, old man begging for money. Like, I'm just like, my problem of this isn't, no one gives a fuck about that. Okay, all right. So
a bit of a perspective.
Just, complete perspective shift. So there was an immense value of going there and attaining those perspective shifts. It felt like I was going to life university. Like every time I'd go on this trip, it would be an upgrade, and I'd have like a series of, you know, downloads. or just realizations of life and myself. So that was really valuable, and therefore I saw it as actually a way to develop myself. The next thing was, I was like, fuck it, I'm young, I'm in my 20s, I can do this, I don't have kids, like what is stopping me? Nothing is stopping me. And I did travel a few times with some friends. I had some beautiful experiences. But so many people that I knew at that time, they didn't want to go. They're just like, nah. And I was just like, let's go. It's a great time to go and do that. Like, you're not going to regret it. You're not going to regret going just to some random country and hanging out in the Himalayas and just looking at some beautiful mountains. You're not going to regret it unless you go there and you get some horrific parasite that makes you lose 10 kilos, which I did get eating dodgy cheese in the northern areas of Pakistan. So there can be elements of regret there.
Yeah, elements. I'm sure there was beauty in there somewhere. So,
Exactly.
Interesting. Thank you. So then, before you said like with the breakup, because that sounds like it was pretty fucking instrumental in a lot of this stuff, certainly your behaviors for a period of time, opened up a lot of old wounds from childhood. And I know now that you're obviously doing, work around the shadow and inner child stuff. Like somewhere in there, you've gone and done some work on that stuff. But when you talk about the old wounds were opening up, were those things that you were also aware of? Was that story of like, you said about I'm not good enough to be a son, etc. Was that the kind of thing that it took you on? And then when did you get to the point of like, let's face that shit head on and work on it?
So I only made that connection a few years ago. That it was that the breakup opened up old wounds. At the time, it was just a different surface layer experience that reinforced the original wound that would express itself differently. So instead of like, I'm not good enough to be a son to my dad, it's, I'm not good enough to be a boyfriend to my ex. It's just a different person, but it's the same type of narrative. And that's all I was stuck in at that time. But what I realized was during my 20s, like I hadn't had a relationship in like 8 years. Since that original relationship, I was traveling, I was going, I was, working on myself, and and it was all great. It all happened perfect timing and divine timing. But I just hadn't been in a relationship in a while, and I got to a point where I was starting to feel a bit lonely, and I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't mind being in a relationship now. So I started just thinking about it a bit more. I'm like, okay, what are the walls up that's getting in the way of me getting in a relationship right now? Like what is there? And I just started inquiring into it. And my best mate and my housemate, who's now my business partner, he he does the same sort of work as me. And he's like, oh, you want me to ask you some questions about it? I'm like, yeah, let's go. And upon asking questions, just realized that basically that the reason why I wasn't opening myself up to a relationship was because there was a part of me who was in fear of being abandoned. And it wasn't just being abandoned the same way that I felt that my ex abandoned me, because it went from this love and everything's fine and sweet, but really I was just completely oblivious and not seeing all the red flags and not taking responsibility for any of my shit. It's like, oh, it's fine, whatever, sweep it up under the rug and let's go. We're in love. We're gonna stay with each other forever, no matter how much of a
that's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly. But it was really the core wound of me feeling like I was abandoned from my father. Because the way in which that happened, it felt similar in a way, because when my father left, everything was fine. He was there, but then he just left and there was no explanation. It was like he went cold. Like we didn't know where he was. I'm there, a little kid, like, where is he? He would be otherwise. I kind of felt like he was ignoring me the same way that I felt like my ex did to me as well, which made it really painful and hurtful. So that wall of me holding me back from getting into a relationship was really there to protect me from going through that experience again. So I had to challenge that belief, let go of that. And then funnily enough, after that, it was like a few months later that I actually got into a relationship and I connected with someone, and I'm still with her now. So it's quite interesting. It's like once you energetically within your body, subconsciously, beliefs, whatever it is, you work on removing some of those blocks, it's not like the outside world just changes and now your girlfriend just comes. It's really just you're more open to receiving what was always there, because for those 8 years, there was always potential women that I could have been in a relationship with. But I always like, no, I'm traveling and I'm working on myself. And that was great. I'm glad I did that at that time, because I don't regret anything. But it just shows you how some of the work you can do in that area can really create some more options for you moving forward.
Yeah, well, if we're limited here, you take the limits away, there's certainly more options, right? There's expansion. So, okay, now, knowing what you know, is someone's listening along and they're like, okay, so this kind of core wound stuff, this kind of inner child stuff. I know this is a big subject, but I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Where do you think someone starts when it comes to like accessing and exploring that piece of like inner child, core wound? Like, okay, yep, there's some shit not happening in my life. Like, where do I go there?
Good question. There's two different pathways to go. You can take a bottom-up approach, which means more focusing more on your nervous system, your body, the somatic experience that you have in your body, how you're feeling. Or you can take a top-down approach, which is more focusing on introspection, psychoanalyzing yourself, going into the stories, the beliefs, the narratives, then connecting to the body. The way that I guide people with is more of a top-down approach. There's loads of bottom-up approaches that can help people, like breath work, rebirthing ceremonies, somatic shaking movements, things like that. Even yoga, it's really a bottom-up approach, learning how to connect with your body and teach your body how to feel safe without getting into the narrative of it. They're both great and they're both needed, and I do both. So the way that I am going to explain it now is a top-down approach. And the best way to do it is if you were to just right now take a moment to just write down everything in your life right now that you're struggling with. It doesn't have to be connected to anything from your past. You don't have to make mention of any past memories, nothing, but just on the surface, the absolute surface layer manifestation of what you're struggling with, just start with that and write that down. It could be, I procrastinate working on my business. I freeze up in social situations and don't express myself fully and share my views. I judge myself for feeling sad. Whenever I'm sad, I notice myself judging myself for it. Whatever the surface layer manifestations that you're currently aware of, just write them down, list them down, and there may be a whole lot of them. But all that's going to do, it's going to allow you just to gain a bit more of awareness as to exactly what you're working with, okay? So think of all these things as the leaves to the tree. These are all just what's manifesting from the roots, okay? It's all going boom and spreading outwards from that. Then what we do from the leaves is we start to just go a bit deeper and deeper and deeper into the branches, into the trunk, and then into the roots, okay? So what I think some people may do is they focus so heavily on trying to get to the roots. Okay, what happened in my childhood? Because right now I just don't feel good enough. I don't feel worthy. I don't feel good enough right now. Why don't I feel good enough? Maybe something in childhood. What happened in my childhood? My childhood was fine. Like everything's fine. I was in the past. It doesn't matter anymore. Rather than trying to jump like 10 steps ahead, just focus on the leaves first, focus on the surface, and then from there you can start to go deeper and deeper into it to then eventually finding the root. And then how you would do that, well, I mean, there's so many different techniques and way to do it. I mean, ultimately what I would do is get someone to select one of them. Okay, which one's the most important one for you right now? And also keep in mind that a lot of the time people may write down, I don't feel good enough. It's too vague. You got to get specific. It's like, how do you not feel good enough? How do you know that you're not good enough? Oh, I'm not good enough because my business sucks and my body's shit and I'm alone and I don't have a partner. Okay, cool. There we go. Now we've got more leaves that we've identified. Cool. You just pick one of them and then you go deeper and deeper and deeper into the belief structure that's manifesting that struggle. This isn't to say that just because it's a belief, you shouldn't be struggling with it, but just what the beliefs are that are causing there to be a struggle. So let's say, for example, I'm procrastinating taking action in my business. And taking action may look like posting more on social media, building a landing page, getting clear on what my message is. I'm just procrastinating doing all these things. Okay, cool. All right. Then the questioning may be like, all right, what does procrastinating these areas of your business, what does that give you? Now, the very logical answer will be, it gives me a delayed outcome. It's creating more anxiety, more stress, and it's causing me to feel even more worthless and not good enough. Cool. Very logical answer. With this, you have to let go of the logic and you have to answer almost as if you're speaking on behalf of different parts of you. So then you can frame the question as like, okay, well, on behalf of the part of you who wants to procrastinate, what is it trying to give them? It's protecting me from failing. Okay, all right, cool. So what procrastinating your business is doing for you, it's protecting you from failing. Why you want to protect yourself from failing? Because if I fail, I'm not good enough and I'm not unworthy. And then I'm going to be judged. Okay, I get you. Judged by who? My friends, my family, people on social media, potential clients. Like they're just going to think I'm a, crappy coach, whatever it is. Okay, cool. I get it. Now we've gone into more of the branches, a bit more of the belief structure that's manifesting that procrastinating your business. Now what we can do is we can go even deeper into it and be like, okay, where did you learn that being judged by people means that you're a failure? Well, when I was young and I played sports, every time I didn't play sports properly, I would get judged by the coach. We had this coach who was some Russian dude, and he was just like using these old Soviet methods on us. And every time I would kick the ball like 1% incorrectly, he would have a fit and project all of his anger that he had because he was miserable in his relationship out at me as a 6-year-old kid who just wanted to go have fun and play soccer with his friends. And that happened every week for many days. And it didn't just happen with him, but it happened with another teacher. And then it also happened with my dad. And, so I have a lot of memory stored in this belief here that provides validity to this claim that I'm making, that being judged means that I'm not good enough. Okay, cool. All right. Now we've gotten deeper into the trunk. So now we can understand what the memories that you're holding on to that haven't been reframed, that haven't been reprogrammed, that you haven't seen in a different way, that you haven't seen this guy, Yuri, whatever his name is, ex fucking soccer Olympian dude guy there who's judging you for kicking the ball wrong. You haven't been able to see his expression from a mature lens now, from a lens of, he was just projecting at me because of his own stuff. And it actually wasn't because I wasn't good enough. So now we can get deeper into the roots of it and then challenge those beliefs directly at its roots. So you have a better relationship with being judged. You have a better relationship with failing because it's inevitable. You're going to fail when you're working in a business in different areas. It's you can't bypass that human experience that's necessarily there to give you the feedback that you need to evolve your business and get it better. You can't change being judged. There's going to be people that just don't like you, and that's fine. You have to learn how to navigate that and reframe what it means to you when people do this. And regardless of all this, you're still worthy of love, yada, 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 etc. So it's like through going deeper into that, you may be able to uncover some of the core wounds, challenge them directly at its source. You may even find with some of these, doing some of this work, you have a bit of a release in this memory of this energy known as this emotion in your body. So you have a bit of an emotional release, and ultimately just a big aha moment and a big kind of breakthrough, just completely shatter your current construct in your mind to create space for a more mature, evolved lens of the world.
Giving some space to let that drop. Thank you. Yeah, bro, I love that. And what a and what a beautiful example and journey there. And of course, hopefully we can pick up, because there was a few, other ones shared at the start. There's the business one, but there's so many ways in which these things can play out. So really beautiful, simple analogy, and the digging in there. And not trying to potentially put everything on, like, I've got to find this big thing here, because if I do, and that might be really fucking obvious, like for you, like your old man left. Cool. Well, what the fuck do I do with this? How do I even approach this? And of course, like with some trained people, environments that can be guided. But it's also very easy. And this is the thing I find for a lot of guys as well. It's like, here's all the shit that ain't working in my life. And that's the stuff that needs to change. And that's really important. But we also can't stay at, to this example, the level of the leaves, or we won't get to the roots. We'll just want band-aids, right? And band-aids don't really do much. If you've got a gangrenous trunk, does that really, the analogies didn't really cross there. Thank you for taking us into that. Where I want to kind of tangent to, I'm certainly interested in the anger piece, but I want to go to a post that you've shared many things, but there's a post that I saw you share a little while ago on social media, and I'm going to quote it. So just to get ready to hear your own words, you said this: "Men are still in boyhood when they can't be upfront, honest, make their own decisions, apologize, lead, and protect." So I want to dive into this a little bit because I love this. And then also the inclusion of this word at the end, which is protect. Because that's one of the things that I see for a lot of men when we're working with them, but certainly when we look out in the world, it's as if that's one of the words that we latch onto and we focus there. And that came at the end. I'm not sure if you intended it to go at the end and all that stuff needed to go in front of it, but I'd love you to kind of explore this a little bit, because it is such a primal thing. But also what I hear in that is it cannot be just this piece called protect, and also maybe the one version of it that we might manifest and have glorified and learned. Can you kind of talk through that?
Yeah. All right. So think of all of those things as responsibilities. You are responsible to being honest. You are responsible to being to protect. So as a boy, let's say boy psychology, a boy is still dependent on others and therefore under responsible for these certain areas of his life, because he's a boy. He doesn't have the capability or the capacity at that time to be able to embody those responsibilities. Now, what I believe is, as a man, what helps you evolve into, let's say, more of a man is via more of the responsibilities that you take on. So let's say I have a business now. That's a responsibility. I have an investment property. That's a responsibility. I have a relationship. That's a responsibility. I have a dog. That's a responsibility. I have a kid. I have a few kids. I have a few homes. I have a company now. I have people that work in this company. These are all things that I'm responsible for. I have this conscious community that we're, it's all based on improving the health and well-being of the world. That's a responsibility. I've got my divine mission. That's another responsibility. The more responsibilities that you attain, the more challenging it's going to be, the more chances that you're going to have of failing and essentially facing parts of yourself that you wouldn't be able to find if you were to stay in the comfort zone of your boyhood and remaining in this place where you're not taking on these responsibilities to challenge yourself. So all those things are really things that I believe are great values that I value, that when embodied and practiced really challenge you to be a better man. So for example, honesty, being truthful is one of the most challenging things, like in a relationship, like being honest with how I feel and sharing a perspective, not concealing the truth and hiding it just to keep the peace. Like that's what I believe a boy would do, but a man would be more likely to actually speak his truth and share that. And that's a responsibility. And it's not easy because there's chances that I'm going to be judged by the other person. There's chances that someone's going to disagree with me. There's chances that they may, potentially abandon me or reject me for my truth and my view. So
not choose me.
Right. Now, I actually see all of those things as quite like equal in terms of the level of importance.
Mm,
The protection piece, look, I like understanding how humans are from a primitive perspective as well, because I understand that it makes up a huge part of our brain.
mm,
Okay? Um, majority of our brain is associated with more older parts. It's only quite newer parts of the brain, we call them the more conscious parts of the brain, that
mm,
are only, like I said, quite new, but they're not used as much compared to the older parts of the brain. Now, if we're going to talk about the older parts of the brain, the male, we originate as a tournament species, hence why men are larger than women. We tend to be bigger and stronger and can apply more force and power. Therefore, our role within tribes
mm,
was to protect.
mm,
We had that role. There's things that our bodies can do that make us more suitable for that role. Okay. And I'm sure that our brain as well, our mind and the way that it thinks.
mm,
So I know that when I was 15 years old, I was highly motivated to pursue these things
mm,
because I wanted to protect. And that was
mm,
great. That was a great motivator. And it got me on the right track. And it was a part of me that I connected to and channeled and used. Same thing as, we can say competitiveness. It can also be expressed as a masculine trait. And that's a trait that isn't inherently bad, but if you can
mm,
learn how to connect with and channel that part of you and use it for something good, well,
mm,
then that's great. That's amazing. That's beautiful. You look at all the best athletes in the world. Some of them are multimillionaires. They have so much influence on people. They spread a good message. Like, they have connected to that part of them and they use it. And
mm,
great. That's amazing. There's nothing wrong with that at all. So I think the protection piece there, it really depends how you want to frame it. It doesn't always have to be like, oh, you have to protect and learn how to fight and use a gun and all this sort of stuff. And although I'm all for that stuff too. Like, I learned mixed martial arts and boxing, and I haven't really been taught how to shoot weapons before, but I've shot a couple. In some of these
mhm.
countries I've been through where there isn't many rules. But I think protection can just mean like protecting people with financial security, protecting
Mm,
them with a safe home so that people
mm,
can express themselves, protecting them with offering that safe space for them
mm,
to let's say you have a child, a safe space for them to cry or whatever, express emotions.
mm,
Protection can mean that, you're
mm,
creating a safe environment. You're not creating an unsafe environment that breeds insecurity. And I
mm,
think it
mm,
takes a lot of responsibility, and it's very challenging to do that, to create
mm,
that safe environment. Like, I know we do that for our clients. We create that safe environment, and it's a lot of responsibility. You have
mm,
people that are opening up to you, being super vulnerable, and it's like, in that moment where they're so vulnerable, you could say anything to them and it would really hurt them if you were to say
mm,
something that is like not
mm.
not
Well, maybe not
not
even say, but like obviously what you say, perhaps with your body, right?
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just like the level of responsibility there to
Mm,
hold that safe space. It's super important, and I think it takes a a man who's evolved and who's who values being a good person and
mm,
facing parts of him that would otherwise choose to, even if it's an automatic response, choose to create an unsafe environment, whether he's addicted to the instability or
yeah.
uses that as manipulation tactics, or wants people to feel down because if he's holding on to resentment, or projecting out anger because he's using them as an emotional punching bag, whatever it is. Like that
Mm,
is, from my perspective, just observing it, it's operating more out of the wounds of the inner child, more boy psychology. It's more of a kid, even if you're in a man's body, you're still the level of maturity that's being operated from that, you could say, is the level of a boy. And I know this sounds a bit judgmental, but these are things that I think as a man or anyone, we have to we have to access our inner critic sometimes and observe ourselves and analyze ourselves and be like, yeah, okay, that was a bit immature what I just did there. Where's that come from? And then approach it with some compassion and love. But there has to be some judgment there to begin with, to be able to be like, ooh, what was that? Okay, let me go into that.
Yeah, right. And I suppose, maybe ideally coupled with that curiosity, because I've witnessed a lot of men who just, they're solely in the judgment, and that's all it is in their head, as you said, loud, busy, and what I am my harshest critic. It's like, yeah, no shit, bro. I'm extremely hard on myself, but I love this. And the idea of protection is so beautiful. It manifests in some pretty interesting ways. It is very primal, but it also, I think it's something that we get to expand. And this idea that was coming to mind when you're speaking there is the idea of being of use, like being useful. I mean, that's such a driver for men. And I think, unfortunately, what happens is we learn some pretty narrow versions of it. And I think the invitation there is to expand it, even to protection or safety. 100%. It could be in any context, but let's say in a relationship, like, I'm physically safe, I don't harm her or them. It's like, well, that's a fucking tiny, it's really important. Holy shit, that's important. But it's a tiny piece of that, right? How do I actually provide safety? How can I be of use? And to that piece there of like, that doesn't create insecurity. I think that's such a beautiful piece there, because there's so many ways in which that can happen. I can protect someone's vulnerability and heart and softness in that moment, to the description that you said around conversation. I can provide a safe environment for someone to actually be present and be seen and be honored and all that. I love it. And there's so much where we could continue to explore here.
I just had a thought, and I think it's really cool what you're saying. But it's like, you could get, like, let's say, stereotypical hypermasculine man provides a lot of, let's say, financial security and physical security, warding off, potential, threats, and, getting really jacked, and, knowing how to fight, and I know how to operate weapons, and I'm very successful. That is a beautiful element of security there. But there may be other components of security that isn't attained. Let's say when it comes to having a challenging conversation in your relationship, you're not able to just listen. Your go-to is to project and judge. There isn't safety there. There isn't a protection being held in that space. Or it can be in the complete other opposite end of the spectrum, where you can have some guy who, tilts, more so on the end of the spectrum, being more feminine in his feelings, really compassionate, great at listening, and just like holding space. But when it comes to like financial security or even physical security, first of all, financial security is out the window. He might be go with the flow and, leave it up to the universe, abundance, or no direction. And, or when it comes to like actually like a physical situation, doesn't have the courage to step in and set that boundary with someone else who may be threatening others. So, I think it's always important to have a bit of everything. And this is what I would call the integrated man. He has access to some different tools, and he can use all of them depending on what moment he's in.
Yeah. I agree. And I love that, right? Because the boundaries, if I can't uphold a boundary for myself, or perhaps those who I have some responsibility towards, then that ain't safe. I'm thinking, like, I want to, I'd love to talk about that some more, dive into, the integrated man there piece, right? I've seen you spoke about this, and I speak about this myself, kind of like doing the work, consuming the stuff versus actually integrating it. I think that's such an important conversation. There's also a piece that I'd love to explore. Perhaps we can do it another time as well, where I've seen you talk about it, and I've talked about it as well, like the form of kind of conditional niceness, and that really being a manipulation, and the charge. And I saw a conversation that you had with someone online, the charge that people can have around that word of manipulation. So there's so much in that, I think, because I see that a lot in nice guys, and I work with a lot of nice guys. I'm aware of the time, so I've got one final question for you, and you can go anywhere you want with this. and keep it pretty punchy. But that's this, because I have no idea, beyond your story right now, if this is even relevant. But I'm going to go there and we'll see how we go with it. Charles, how would you say that you have personally benefited from having good men in your life? Men who can protect, who are strong, who are compassionate, who see you, who are willing to actually be honest with you.
Yeah, it completely restored like my faith in humanity, because for me, my relationship with women has always been good. My perception of women has always mostly been good. I grew up in a home with 4 women, a lot of feminine energy at home, and I work with a lot of women. 80% of my followers are women, so there's obviously something there on a soul level that connects me and gravitates me towards women. But for most of my life, I've been rejecting the more masculine components of society, like even if you were to like authority, governments, like all these aspects of organization, structure, like logic, like it's been those facets that I've been heavily against throughout my life. And and it's okay to criticize elements of the masculine as well as the feminine elements of society. None of them are perfect. They've all got their shadow aspects, flaws, whatever you want to call them. But I think mine was just really incomplete, rejection towards that. And it really stemmed from my relationship with my dad at the core. So I think having some good men in my life, and I've been blessed and very grateful to have some amazing like brotherhood, like really good mates, boys that we can just fucking have a laugh and just give each other shit, but they talk deep, talk about life, cry in front of them, be there to support each other, be advised by them, go out and let's go climb that mountain. Yeah, let's go. Like just that really adventurous side, get our hands dirty. I've been super blessed and super grateful to have men like that in my life. And I've always had a really close group of mates around me, boys. It's kind of changed over the years. But yeah, and I think that's been really healthy for me to learn how to just express those parts of me out there, and also understand men a lot more. I think we are very misunderstood and misrepresented and stereotyped a lot, and really seeing that beauty in men, that what we can experience and share together, and what we can share with the world. So I think it's been very important, just as much as it's been important for me to have, those beautiful women in my life that has taught me that softness, that compassion, that nurturing energy. My sisters are just incredible. Every time, it was just my birthday recently, and it just brought back so many memories of all the birthdays I've had. They'd always be there making beautiful. I'm Lebanese, making beautiful Lebanese food, and it just like that nurturing, that love. It really is beautiful. Experiencing love in different ways, and I know individually we all experience it in our own different way, but I definitely see that there is slightly different ways that my experience with women and my experience with men have collectively expressed it. And it's been great being able to experience it on both ends, because it makes me a lot more accepting of myself and all the parts of me, but just of people in general. So yeah.
Beautiful. Love that. Thank you. And, you said at the top, you mentioned about your retreat and your things that you've got coming up. So we'll make sure that we get, links to all those kinds of things. People, if you want to check out some of Charles's work as well as his content, definitely do that, because there's definitely some entertainment and some lessons and some loving truths in there as well. Charles, thank you so much for coming on the show. You absolute legend.
Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate it, bro. You love your energy. It was actually a pleasure being here and having this conversation. I've been invited on a lot of podcasts before, but really enjoyed how you've held the space and your energy and the work you're doing as well. So I just want to acknowledge all of that, brother. And I appreciate all your support. You've been following me and engaging and sharing my content, man. I really appreciate it, bro. And I try and thank you as much as I can whenever you've shared that. And I just also want to say, thanks for welcoming me into your community and sharing my story with the people that follow you and trust you. And I just want to say thanks to everyone who's sat down and listened to me just ramble on and talk a whole bunch of shit for the last hour and a bit. And hopefully you got some gold nuggets out of it and things that you can take away and that can be useful for you in your own journey.
Beautiful. Nothing more to say. Appreciate it. Thank you. And that's us.
Beautiful, brother. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.